Hi, this is Danny Borris again, and this is video number 22 in the collection representing my collection. I'm awfully glad to have come to the end of this. This should be the final video, until next time, that is. But let's begin with the first group. Oh, by the way, once again, please subscribe and tell me how much you love my collection. And if you love it that much, you might even be able to buy a little bit of it. I can be reached at danielborris@yahoo.ca. This first grouping is Britain's hollow-cast medievals. There are sets here produced in hollow-cast by Britons over the years since the very beginning of the company. The most famous are the Knights of Agincourt, designed and mastered by Roy Selwyn Smythe. There are 6 foot and 1 mounted figure. Next we have the tournament set. In this case there are 2 tournament sets. And so there are 4 foot figures, the heralds, and 6 mounted figures. Finally we have the knights in armour. There are 6 foot and 4 mounted. The total in this group, 16 foot and 11 mounted figures. This next set is something that I picked up years ago. I had bought a large set of plastic American Civil War figures, and other than 3 lovely elastone pieces that I bought in Germany, these are the only plastic figures in my collection. I had just read a book on Chancellorsville, Disaster and Victory, and was spending most of my winter nights in a condo in Toronto to stay close to the action at head office. I needed something to do, so I painted this small diorama. The figures are Atlantic miniatures, and the grouping consists of 183 foot, 24 mounted, and 5 artillery pieces. It kept me out of the pub over the winter months when I was in temporary accommodation. This next grouping is the last in the Donald Featherstone collection to be addressed at this point in time. It is the third of his Napoleonic frames in my collection, and by far it is the largest of the 3 frames. It consists of 516 foot figures, 122 mounted, and 9 artillery pieces. The figure manufacturers include Hinchcliffe, Minifigs, Garrison, Les Higgins, and that's it. This next grouping are Napoleonic Marines of the Guard and the British Rifle Brigade. These sets are back to the work of the Scrobies, both Marlborough and Blenheim figures. The French depict the Marines and Polish Lancers of the Guard. 3 sets of Marines being the drums and bugles, Matelots, the colour party. The Lancers show 6 dismounted and 1 mounted standard bearer. In addition, there's a French Marshal with map from William Britons, and a Grenadier of the Old Guard in greatcoat from William King. There are also 2 Lancers, senior officers from Russia, St. Petersburg. Also in the group are 2 sets of the Rifle Brigade from Blenheim Miniatures. The total group consists of 34 foot figures and 1 mounted figure. This next group takes us to the original book manuscripts that I purchased from Donald Featherstone prior to clapping eyes on his War Games figures. After many years of only limited interest in wargaming, I was browsing through a model shop and came across a War Games magazine. In the classifieds there was an ad from Donald Featherstone wishing to sell his library. I called him immediately from Canada. This was around 1999. He explained that it was really the original manuscripts of his books he wanted to sell. There were 41 original manuscripts. I bought them. This led to my buying his War Games Armies and lots of other gems. In my video, number 11 shows a walking tour of the manuscripts. You may choose to watch it for further detail. This setup shows one manuscript, Redcoats for the Raj. The original manuscript and book are housed in a custom rosewood box. The book is inscribed to me from Dawn. The picture frame shows key elements of the book: dust cover, letter of authenticity, synopsis, original maps and pictures. This is repeated in my collection 41 times for 41 original book manuscripts. This next set represents Frontline's logo. The logo shows 8 British squaddies breasting a hill during World War I. In addition, there are 2 foot and one dismounted figure in front of a trench section. Of those 2 little groupings, which would you rather have been in? The total figures in this set piece are 10 infantry and 1 mounted. All are quite magnificent. This next grouping is termed the Redcoats. They are William Britain's new model soldiers, and they're museum quality, although they are represented in gloss paint. Sold individually, they represent the Redcoats, the British infantrymen, through time. This next grouping shows, again, Redcoats, but this time it is the British Grenadiers in the field. There are over 50 firing hollow cast William Britain's figures, standing, kneeling, firing, with their officers kneeling with binoculars. They're rare, and they represent the Grenadier Guards, the Scots Guards, the Welsh Guards and the Irish Guards. This last grouping of the video shows the battles that took place on the Plains of Abraham in Canada during the French Indian Wars. Montcalm, the French general in command of the French armies in Canada during this period, believed he was in an impregnable position at Quebec in 1759. General Wolfe, in command of the British forces, thought differently, and so he and his army made a near impossible night climb up the cliffs to the Plains of Abraham, which overlooked the city. The French were made up of regulars, militia, marines, Acadian volunteers, and woodland Indian allies. The Brits were regulars and included the 43rd and 47th Foot and the Fraser Highlanders, who suffered the highest casualty rate of the battle. Both Wolfe and Montcalm were killed during the battle. The grouping consists of figures from many manufacturers: Frontline, John Jenkins, Tradition, and Spirit of Empire. The total foot figures in this grouping, 74, and 2 mounted.